Hey beautiful watchers, I'm back! I drank a lot of whiskey, so I'm feeling much better now, so let's do this. Let's just jump straight back into it. At one point in this book, Gray actually has the gall to ask Anna why she's always defying him. Well, I don't know, maybe because she's not your fucking property, and there's no reason why she should obey you, you fucking maniac! When he says you're mine in this, it's not like a cutesy I'm yours, you're mine kind of thing. He actually believes that he owns her. In an attempt to be fair to Gray, something that takes an awful lot of effort on my part, it seems Anna has some pretty serious hang-ups of her own that contribute to the bad health of their relationship. For starters, arguing makes her horny. Now, bearing in mind that Gray has the emotional maturity of a 6-year-old, he is never going to learn to stop treating her like scum if he can see that making her upset will result in more sex for him. She also has a pretty serious inferiority complex. Her personal journey throughout this book, the part of the story that isn't about her fixing Christian, is about her supposedly overcoming her insecurities. She's convinced she's not attractive enough to be with someone like Gray, she doesn't think he would be interested in her at all if it weren't for the mother thing and his other hang-ups, and she's constantly terrified that Gray will eventually realise that he's lying to himself when he says that he doesn't need the sub-dom relationship to be happy anymore. That last one is so overpowering it completely skewers this woman's priorities. She panics way more about Gray wanting to be left alone with his ex-sub than she did about having a loaded gun pointed right in her face just minutes before. She is screaming no, 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 and Taylor has to drag her out of the room. Ye gods, girl, I know she's dropped the gun by this point, but it's still a potentially dangerous situation. This is the one time when Gray is actually doing something intelligent by using his domination persona to defuse a possibly deadly situation, and the one thing you can think of is, what if he decides he likes her more than me? That's so messed up! And in regards to the only being interested in her because of the hang-ups thing, well, honestly, yeah, the book kind of made that obvious. I mean, it doesn't mean he'll ditch her if he gets a handle on them, but let's not kid ourselves here. Dr. Flynn, the psychiatrist, actually calls her out on the looks disparity thing, because Anna is supposed to be quite attractive, she just has really low self-esteem. Which is actually kind of a shame, because disposing of the trope that conventionally attractive people should only date other conventionally attractive people would have been this book's only positive message if they'd rolled with it, but whatever, I expect nothing from this author. Now, I would like to say that Anna's arc concluded with her finding the self-assurance to tell herself that Gray really does want her and not the freaky sex, and there's some attempt to get that across, but the problem is James tried to introduce a second character arc for her, where she realises near the end of the book that she really is actually into some of the stuff in the playroom, as long as she gets to clearly define the hard limits, free of Gray trying to guilt trip her or cajole her into doing more than she's comfortable with. The problem is, when you have both of these arcs in a single story, it's impossible to not see it as her giving in to her insecurities and convincing herself that she likes bondage so she doesn't have to worry about losing Gray over the lack of it. To make matters infinitely worse, them finding a middle ground that they both enjoy with the bondage stuff like this would have been a much better ending to the first book, back when James was still trying to pass off their arrangement as a normal BDSM relationship. But it's too fucking late now, because it's been revealed that BDSM is just a bad way of dealing with childhood trauma and not a perfectly healthy fetish. In this context, what Anna is doing is enablement. FYI, the gun-wielding crazy ex-sub, I mean, yeah, she has a name, but come on, is unintentionally the funniest part of this book. She's meant to be all worn out and deranged, so she's speaking in really simplistic sentences and sounding all confused, and she refers to Gray as the Master because she's fixated on rekindling their domination relationship. However, the combination of these two things makes her sound like she's fucking Igor. The Master never let anyone sleep in his bed before. The Master is acting very strange. He smiles and laughs more than the Master used to. Does the Master want to take Igor into the playroom and punish him? The complete and absolute disconnect between what Gray says he's going to do and what he actually does is just as prevalent throughout this book as its predecessor. Not only does he keep trying to control Anna and trying to strong-arm her into saying yes to his proposal after specifically saying that he wouldn't do that, he also tries to stealthily implement the rules of the contract that he promised to throw away. Even Anna realises this eventually, though of course she doesn't call him on it. Gray always responds with yes, anything when Anna asks him if she can ask him a question, but almost never gives her a straight answer to said question. Hell, half the time he gets mad at her for asking it. I am genuinely disappointed that Anna didn't think to scream, "Help, help, I'm being kidnapped by a sexual assaulter, please call the police," when Gray picked her up and carried her to his car for her safety. I mean, it wouldn't have been a lie. Anna acknowledging to herself and the audience that Grace being an unacceptable human being would have been a good first step, but because she never does anything about it except reward it with sex and then find a way to justify it in her head, all it achieves is drawing more attention to it so the audience can be even more frustrated than before. I kind of got the impression that E.L. James was writing this book with a movie adaptation in mind from the get-go, because she mentions what music is playing in the background on multiple occasions. Both Anna and Christian act like way more time has passed than actually has. How long they've known each other, how long they've dated, how long they were broken up for. People are always shocked to find out how little time actually elapses in these books. I kid you not, from the beginning of 50 Shades of Grey to the end of 50 Shades Darker, less than 6 weeks, and most of that was in the first one. I hope I made it clear in my synopsis just how sleazy some of the sex shenanigans they get up to are in this. Honestly, having a quickie in your childhood room at your parents' party is bad enough, and her having the moving balls in her vagina means basically she's going to be getting sexual pleasure from doing things like hugging Grey's little sister, holy shit, but anyways, actually performing sexual acts in a crowded elevator is not just sleazy, it's an actual crime. Sexual fetishes that are perfectly acceptable in the bedroom are never okay the second you get innocent bystanders involved. Wait a second. That sentiment felt somehow familiar.
It seems this is not the first time this couple has behaved like this in public. A close associate to Mr. Gray, who wished to remain anonymous, reported to the Seattle News that they had been observed performing sexual acts underneath a table during a charity event raising money for abused children. Nope.
Oh, no.
Nope. 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 No.
When they say think of the children, this is not what they're talking about.
Nope.
I lost track of the amount of times that this book made a big deal out of Grey touching Anna's knuckles. His fingers caressed my knuckles. He brought my hand to his mouth and kissed my knuckles. He sucked on each of my knuckles in turn. Is this a new fetish I'm not fully aware of? I mean, it's the internet, so it's bound to be out there somewhere, but it seems to have come completely out of nowhere in this book series. The bit where Grey drips ice cream onto Anna's clitoris was pretty horrible already, just for yeast infection reasons, but the preceding flirting was pretty fucking painful too. Do you have any ice cream? Well, yes, but it's only vanilla. Well, that's okay, I'm developing a real taste for vanilla when I'm with you. Ugh, the cringe was strong with that scene. Anna calls Grey my 50 Shades, or my 50 Shades of Fucked Up in her head all the way through the book. I think James wanted to compensate for everyone thinking it was stupid that the last book was named after a blink and you'll miss it throwaway line. So Anna finds out that Grey buys all his subs the same Audi that he got her, so when it comes time to replace the one that got paint thrown on it, he decides to get her a different model. Anna is hesitant at first, but what's worrying is when she finds out she might get a convertible, she actually starts getting excited about it. You'll remember how much of a hot topic Grey spending money on her has been up until this point. Apparently this book's latest message is, if a person you've not been dating for very long is making you feel uncomfortable by buying you far, far, far too expensive gifts, maybe just try accepting them. You might find you actually like it. This book really teases the additional information you get about Grey's past before its big reveal, under the huge misconception that it's interesting enough to be worth giving a shit about. So yeah, the doctor's reaction to Anna not having taken the pill for a few days really confused me. She's like, "Oh my god, you're probably pregnant! Ah!" Unless I'm remembering it wrong, I thought that Grey and Anna broke up before it was safe for them to stop using condoms, and they'd gone on using them when they got back together, so what's the fucking problem? I mean, I know condoms don't have a 100% success rate, but she rushes her straight into the bathroom to take a pregnancy test and gives her a really hard time over it. That seems like such an overreaction. The doctor has a possible out if we assume that she wasn't aware of the 3-day breakup and thought that they just ditched the condoms and the pill all at once, which is obviously incompetent of her not to check first before making a diagnosis, but that would explain her actions. Anna, on the other hand, has no such excuse, because if that was the case, all she had to do was tell the doctor that they'd not had unprotected sex, but instead she immediately also becomes convinced she might be up the duff and stops panicking about what Grey's reaction to it might be. If I am remembering it wrong and they did have sex without a condom, let me know in the comments that everything I just said was a massive waste of time brought about by my unwillingness to go back to the first book and check. I don't know why, because she wrote in the sexual assault scene in the first chapter, but James seems to be trying to weigh in on the did Grey rape Anastasia in the first book argument. On occasion, Anna reminisces about things that happened in the first book, which is kind of weird in of itself because that was one week ago for them, but the point is, she says stuff like, "Hey Christian, remember all those times that we had sex and I totally wanted it, so it definitely wasn't immoral?" If this was a visual medium, I'm sure she would have turned to look right at the camera at that point. Gray's behaviour is so erratic in this, going from nice to angry and then back again, that Anna actually feels inclined to look up the symptoms to multiple personality disorder on the internet. That's how bad he is. The worst part about this is when he's in his nice moods, Anna chooses to completely forget about his angry and controlling moods as if they're never going to come back, despite the clear pattern of events thus far. Anna and Gray make a sex bet on a game of pool, and every shot at every pot of said game is described in excruciating, torturous detail. Who would want to read that? Even the die-hard fanbase for this book must have been like, can they just fuck on the table already? I gotta pick up my kids from school in like 20 minutes. One of the most obvious writing fails of this book is all of the descriptions that Anna provides for her many orgasms are always variations of exactly the same thing. I unravel, I become undone, I fall apart, I lose myself, I dissolve around him, I am suddenly nothing, I break into a million pieces. It's the same thing! She says the same thing in a slightly different way every time! So you might remember that I hinted that you'd probably be interested in hearing why Gray didn't stop to make a 10-second fucking phone call to tell his family that he was fine after the helicopter crash. Take a deep breath, my beautiful watchers, because it's a doozy. It was because he was so intent on getting back home as fast as possible to stop Anna from being alone with her friend Jose, he felt he didn't have time to stop for even a second. Yeah. He let his mother think he was dead because he's just that jealous and selfish a person. And this is near the end of the story after Anastasia has been fixing him. This is fixed, Christian! The constant arguments eventually get so extreme, even Gray himself notices them and asks Anna, why do we fight so much? Personally, I would have gone with the answer because you're an obnoxious, controlling, jealous scumbag and I'm only with you because I can't get over how hot you are, but apparently Anna thinks the answer is because we're getting to know each other. Fuck right off with that, E.L. James. How dare you suggest this is par the course for new relationships? Don't you dare try to normalize this kind of toxicity. Yes, all relationships are going to involve fights sometimes, but if your romance starts with constant bickering, within the first few weeks you need to get the hell out of there. It's that simple. You're just not right for each other. By the way, I know these reviews seem a bit all over the place and rambly, but that's exactly what this book is like. You just can't build structure around something so structureless. There are so many more sex scenes than the last book, just so many more. I guess E.L. James has given up on the pretense that her books aren't exclusively catered to the sexually frustrated. Anna celebrates Gray telling her that he loves her for the first time 3 times in this book. The first when she sees that he put a Coldplay song on her iPad and decides this means that he loves her. The second when she says, "You love me," and he responds, "Yes I do," and then again when he actually says, "I love you." That is really, really sad. Damn it, woman, what do I have to do to prove to you that I care about you? Well, you could tell me that you love me. Well, I'm not doing that. Christian, you do love me, don't you? Yes, I guess. Good enough! So I'll see you in a few hours? Okay, I love you. Holy crap! I'd have to say that one of the things that I hated the most about this book, even more than everything else, is all throughout it, Anna is asking Gray for some space to think things over, just a bit of time on her own to think things through, and she never gets it. Gray always finds a way to get her to stay with him, either through insisting it's for her protection, by arranging some super fun thing for them to do that day, like taking his multi-million-dollar yacht out for a spin, or by having that total meltdown where he falls into the sub position. It's almost like he, and by that I mean the author, is aware that if she actually got said space, she would probably never let herself fall back into his emotional black hole. Gray lays down the groundwork for his long-term emotional manipulation of Anna very quickly. One of the things I noticed that royally pissed me off was him referring to her leaving him as her running. It broke my heart when you ran. You're not going to run again, are you? Eventually, Anna starts using the terminology too. Don't worry, Christian, I promise I'm not going to run. The reason this is so insidious is running has a subtle but unmistakable negative connotation in this context. Running away from your problems is a bad thing. Cowards run, heroes stand and fight. By making running the buzzword that they both use to describe the idea of her leaving him again, Gray successfully put a stigma on it. If she runs, she will be doing something wrong and she will have failed in some way. It is so horrible to see textbook manipulation like this happening in something that's supposed to be a romance. At one point, the simile, "I woke up and Gray was wrapped around me like ivy" was used, and I can only assume the author was super proud of herself for coming up with that because it's used 2 or 3 more times in the same third of the book. Although I could be remembering that funny, I blacked out a few times while trying to get through this. It is a horror story of Lovecraftian proportions, reading about the mental process that Anna goes through trying to justify Gray's Oedipus complex to herself. The mental hoops that she jumps through to rationalise it are inexplicable. Once again, just when you think that Gray cannot get any more loathsome as a character, right after Jack Hyde tries to rape Anna, when the tears are still wet on her fucking face, he has a go at her for not listening to him sooner and letting herself get into a situation like that. Dr. Flynn tells Anna that sadism isn't recognised as a mental disorder by the psychiatric community anymore, and it's actually a fetish practiced by perfectly healthy-minded, consenting adults in touch with their sexuality. And the book treats this as a big revelation. I was like, well, fucking duh, why would you even need to confirm that? Oh, fuck me, this is something James found out in between books, and she's trying to backpedal by making it so Gray and Anna are the morons who didn't know or didn't believe this. That explains so much! Okay, disclaimer, obviously I can't prove that's the case one bit, but there's no fucking doubt in my mind. Considering Gray is a big old bag of trust issues, I'm amazed his shrink was willing to send him out of the room so he could give away confidential info about his prognosis to Anna. I mean, think about it, from now on, anytime Gray talks to him, he's going to be thinking, is this going to get passed on to my girlfriend? The doctor-patient rapport is dashed to pieces. When I got to the epilogue where she attempted to set up some suspense for the sequel, I was like, aw, James, you think you can write about something that would be in a real book? That's adorable. When Anna finds naked photos Gray kept of his exes, her first reaction was fear of what he would do if he found out that she found them, not anger at him for having them. She is straight up terrified of this man. One thing that made this book slightly better than the first, and trust me, comparing it favourably to its predecessor is the closest thing to a compliment it will ever get from me, is the lack of Gray blindly assuming that Anna is enjoying being a sub. Don't get me wrong, he still tries to treat her like one because he's a fucking psychopath, but I think trying to comprehend just how stupid he would have to be to not see that she hates it was one of the worst things about 50 Shades of Grey, so I'm glad that at least is dispensed with. One of the plot events that I didn't mention in the synopsis because it started and finished impossibly fast, even compared to all the other stuff that had started and finished impossibly fast before it, was Kate, Anna's roommate, finding a printout of an email that Gray had sent to Anna when they were discussing the terms for their sex contract, and confronting them about it just before they could announce their engagement at the end, demanding to know what the fuck sort of crazy bullshit he was trying to drag her into. Now this, I would have thought, would make Anna realise that the fact that she hadn't felt like she could tell her best friend about anything to do with her relationship with Gray, even after they got rid of the non-disclosure agreement, was one of the most impossibly vivid scarlet of all the red flags one could receive in life, but she simply tells Kate that it's fine and nothing's wrong, and Kate drops the issue immediately. It wasn't until I'd finished reading this book that I realised something. There are no time jumps in it at all. The closest thing it gets to one is them sleeping. Every hour of every day for 10 days is described from them waking up in the morning to going to bed at night. I've never seen this in a book before, not even with books that are based around a single very significant event. They all paced out their stories better than this. It kind of boggles the mind just how weird a writing decision this is. Anyways, let's wrap this up, shall we? In way of summary, here's a reminder of all the red flags that Anna completely ignored in the story. Not being able to tell her friends about her boyfriend's treatment of her because of how it would sound to them. The first thought that always occurs to her after she does anything or anything happens to her is worrying about how her boyfriend will aggressively overreact to it. Here's an easy one. They've been dating less than a month and they've already broken up once and are yet to go a single day without fighting since they got back together. And he wants to put his penis in her because she looks like his mother! At the end of this book, Anna and Gray have only just gotten engaged, but it's like they're already in a super unhealthy, failing marriage that's on its last gasp before a messy divorce. The most charitable thing I can say about this book is it might be slightly less horrific to read than the first one, simply because the anger and disgust you feel at reading about the abusive behaviour is broken up with large stretches of mind-numbing boredom. Compared to 50 Shades of Grey, 50 Shades Darker is like being kicked hard repeatedly in the arse instead of the genitalia. Yes, it's an improvement, but it's still a very painful experience that I'd recommend everyone avoid if possible. Okay, before I go, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to throw out some relationship advice that I've actually had to give people in real life. This applies to men and women. It is never your job to fix your partner, and having to do so isn't romantic in any way. Yes, it's nice if being with a particular person brings out the best in someone or inspires them to better themselves, but if the entire basis of the relationship is you are what is required to make them whole again, if it's based on a one-sided need, then that is not going to work out with a happy ever after in real life. It's just not. They will drain what they need out of you, give nothing back, and leave you empty. Like I said, I've actually had to tell friends this. I've seen it happen to people I care about, and seeing it romanticized like this is infuriating, to say the least. It is so hard to help people see that they are being used as a fucking emotional battery without a charger, and things like this book will only make it even harder in the long run. E.L. James, from myself and everyone else who's been genuinely hurt by the stuff you're passing off as a love story, once again, fuck you. Okay. Just like last time, I'm going to try to convince myself that some good came of me putting myself through this by donating all of the ad revenue these videos make in the first month to shelters and charities that are there to help the victims of domestic abuse. Actually, let's make that 2 months, because I really feel like shit right now. I think the absolute worst thing about reviewing this book is knowing I'm pretty much doomed to cover the third one too now, as you can't just do 2 in a trilogy, that's just silly. But I'm going to make you work for it, my beautiful watchers. Forget retweeting, we're talking challenges, like fan art competitions, subscriber milestones, maybe a scavenger hunt. Someone's gonna have to find the Ark of the Covenant and send me a selfie of them opening it. At least 60 of you are gonna have to eat a cake made out of raw jalapeno peppers. You gotta get Luke Spencer to come to my birthday party. Sacrifice a giraffe to Cthulhu. Train a troop of puppies to reenact the Percy Jackson musical, that'll be a must. Invent a new dance routine that takes the world by storm and name it after me. Get me a lunch date with Lin-Manuel Miranda, that'll be cool. Prove to me the Nemean line is a real thing, then defeat it in unarmed combat. Make it so the DC movies stop sucking. Hey, beautiful watchers, I just wanted to give you a quick reminder that there's a variety of rewards you can earn by becoming a Patreon, including early access to all videos, getting to be a part of the survey about how many people saw the film and read the book, or playing Minecraft with me on my 24-hour server. Higher level contributors can also join the Dom Skype chat room, and best of all, choose future episodes of Lost in Adaptation. However, if right now you are thinking, my goodness the Dom, I can't do that, I'm from the future where we've done away with traditional money and instead barter with a variety of artificial luminescent crystals. Quite useless to you, I'm afraid. Fear not, if you would instead be willing to like, share, subscribe, or a combination of all three, that goes a long way towards helping my channel grow and reach new beautiful watchers. Have a most pleasant day, and I will see you soon.